Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, November 14th, 2020. And our top story this week, the Commonwealth of Virginia explores retirement security. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Mary Morris. She's Chief Executive Officer for Virginia 529. Mary, welcome to the program this morning. Great to see you.
Hi, Jeffrey. It's nice to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure is all mine. And just for the audiences and my notes, I mean, the Virginia 529 plan is the largest 529 plan in the country, correct?
We are. Yes. Across our several programs, we are the largest.
So one of the things I thought was really interesting and why I reached out was my understanding is that like some other states, Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, is exploring state-run retirement programs. And so one of the things that you and the team are doing is trying to figure out how best to do that. And you're looking at, I presume, and we'll get into this in a minute, but you're conducting a study on behalf of the General Assembly. What can you tell us about this effort?
Yeah, this is not something, as with many states, the Commonwealth has looked at this a number of times. We were a part of, I think, the first study probably 5 years ago that the Virginia Retirement System did for the General Assembly. They studied it again a couple of years ago. And when the topic came up again, Virginia 529, I think comes to mind because we do run, a very successful education savings program. We took on disability savings as a second mission 5 years ago when the ABLE federal legislation passed, and then it passed in Virginia, and we were asked to build that program. And so we actually have two disability savings programs. And so no decision has been made as to what might happen in Virginia. But I think given our expertise in working with accounts, working with customers, looking at these types of things, and obviously being focused on saving and the important things that all people think about in savings, we always have known that education is usually the second thing that people talk about. Retirement savings is the first.
Yeah.
We were asked to conduct this final survey, and the two prior surveys were probably less comprehensive in scope than what we're trying to do in Virginia. So I think we're trying to bring together everything that's been done before and expand on that and really look at the landscape, look at what the opportunity set is, what other states are doing successfully now. There are 3 states that have programs open already. So we're starting to get some, I think, good data about the need and the interest in these types of programs, and really trying to give some good information to the General Assembly in our report, which will be due mid-December to the General Assembly, so they can then consider if they want to take this up and go further and really consider having Virginia offer a state facilitated retirement program like we've seen in some other states.
And there are really some similarities to how, and we were talking with Andrea Fairstein recently on the program. I'm sure you may have seen that episode, but we were talking about a lot of the similarities between 529 and the evolution of 529 and what is occurring on state-run programs. Is that your assessment as well, that there's so many similarities and it makes so much sense to take the topology that you've applied over here with 529 and now apply the successes to state-run plans?
Yeah, I think you definitely are seeing that. And again, maybe another reason that they've asked us to look at this, although in Virginia, we operate as an independent state agency to run our education and disability savings programs. In many other states, those programs are run out of a treasurer's office. And so you're seeing in other states, California, Illinois, and Oregon, which have open programs, they are all sort of out of the treasurer's office, which has responsibility now for all 3 of those savings mandates. But I think that is something that has been happening across the states. And you look and say, how do we put these concepts together? Because again, a lot of it goes to education. So everything for me kind of winds back to education, whether we're talking about disability savings, it's about financial education. It's about what you spend a lot of your life thinking and worrying about, right? How do you get messages across? How do you help families make their way through things that are often intimidating. They're daunting. They seem hard, and they seem hard, I think, for employers and employees. And that's perhaps why, what we've found so far in our study is very similar to what you find across the country. Over half of Virginians don't have a retirement savings account, a savings program, and the vast majority of them don't have it because it's not offered by their employer. And there are many reasons why employers don't offer a retirement option. And I think a lot of it, we're starting to get some of the data in from a survey that we've done of employers in Virginia. But what I'm getting from that, and it's all still preliminary, is it's difficult. They don't really know the landscape, and they don't feel comfortable taking on that responsibility for their employees and offering up a program. And so I think states are looking and saying, well, maybe we have some of that expertise. We have the ability to look at the landscape and offer something that can make sense, that takes some of the risk out from the employer's perspective, that provides a cost-effective option to individuals to at least get them started on the right path and thinking about planning and saving for the future.
And I know you haven't yet completed the study, but the Commonwealth is not only a very large 529 plan, but it's a larger state in the union. And would there be opportunities to partner with smaller states? I'm thinking states that have a lot smaller population, maybe don't have the infrastructure in place. I think, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to the ABLE plans, I think there are some other states leveraging some of the infrastructure that maybe you and other states have put into place. So maybe there's an opportunity there for partnership with others.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's premature to even speculate on that, since I truly don't know what the appetite will be for the General Assembly. And right now we are talking purely policy decisions that are above my pay grade. That's not what we're about, and really not advocating for a position. I can have a personal opinion about the need for retirement savings and financial education, but what we're trying to do is again give the landscape, explain the pros of it. We're doing a cost of doing nothing study, which is quite fascinating, and how that impacts, I think, state and local governments. If you have a population that hasn't taken care of retirement savings, and looking at that. But we're also getting comments and feedback from those who don't think it's a great idea or think that it's better done by the private sector. And we certainly understand that. And, so we want to share all of those thoughts and provide a path, I think, for doing it in Virginia. I certainly think there are opportunities, and I do know that it would be difficult for smaller states, I think, to take this on. So that's an absolute, and I think we've seen that with some of the states that are trying to do it. But how you reach out to folks using the levers of state government, that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because one thing I can see is that it needs to be a partnership with other state agencies to have access to your employer roles and to be able to communicate with the employers in the state. So, going through the nuances of that, but I think we certainly have seen I know when we first started down the ABLE path, some states looked and said, well, we're able to do this successfully with compacts among states for, easy pass, is what we call it in Virginia, but, for toll systems, for lotteries. So, there certainly are templates for that. And a number of states have done that with ABLE, and there are even different ways of doing that. You've seen, one state that'll have a number of states that participate, but under one banner. And another model is to have each state with an alliance, but they each have their own separate programs. So, I think we can certainly learn from what folks have done in the ABLE arena and take some of that learning into the retirement arena. Certainly wouldn't foreclose it, but it's premature at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mary, I'm really, I'm really think it's amazing, one, that you're taking on this study, but I'm also happy that we're looking at this from a federal, private sector, and state and local government. So congratulations to you and the team at Virginia 529. Really appreciate coming on the program, and best of luck with your study for the General Assembly.
Thanks. If I can say one final thing, we have a landing page, we have a website for anybody that's interested to see what we're doing. There's a lot of information there, and we're going to be building out and have some listening sessions for folks in Virginia and anybody else that wants to participate. It's virginia529.com/retirement-study. And, I think you should be able to sort of poke around and find it if that's too long to pick up on. But, again, trying to get as many voices, as much input as we possibly can, and give some really good information to the General Assembly to help them as they make a really important decision for the Commonwealth.
Mary, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you and the team.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. Great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And when we come back, we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with a give-back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the give-back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. On Tuesday, I spoke with 7 Investing's Dan Klein about protecting consumer credit scores. Let's take a look.
Well, the intent is good, but I'm not sure they're going to accomplish the right thing. So they're talking about things like, well, if you owe money but have a repayment plan, your credit score can't go down. And that sounds good in theory, but let's look at what the point of the credit score is. The goal of a credit score is to help the lender decide how worthy you are to repay the money. And for that, they need the entire picture. So if your credit score is sort of artificially inflated, they're just going to look at your bank account, your debt balance. They're going to look at other things. So it's just going to kind of make the credit score less meaningful for that person. I understand you don't want people that have COVID-19 related debt to be dinged on their credit, but that debt's still real. So I'd feel a lot better if there was some sort of debt forgiveness or debt repayment or government program where you could get that debt, interest free or something like that. I'm not sure we really want to monkey with the credit score. It's an important number, but it's also a flawed number. So my credit score is in the higher end, but I've had too many inquiries in the past 2 years. So we thought we were going to move, so we did a credit check at a place we were thinking about renting. I applied for a credit card. when I got my eyes done, the laser surgery, that I financed. So it wasn't like I was taking out inordinate amounts of credit. It was just I was taking advantage of financing deals on things that I was going to easily be able to pay off anyway, or I had life situations where they check your credit. That hurts my credit score. That's not really a real picture of where my finances are, and some lenders are going to look at that nuance and understand it. Other lenders are not. It's why when you're borrowing money, you really want to look at who's lending you the money. And you might want to find a mortgage broker who can find you exactly the right fit. Or you might want to, let's say you're buying a car, you might want to sit down and join a credit union or go to your credit union and talk to them about the loan. You really want people who take a holistic view of your finances and look and say, okay, Jeff ran up $20,000 worth of debt during the pandemic because he wasn't working. Now that's not the case with either of us, but let's say Bill, because that's neither of us, ran up this debt, but now it's 2 months after the pandemic. He's paid it off because he was being cautious with his cash. He was paying minimums, but when he went back to work, he paid a bunch of debt off. Well, carrying that debt's going to be a negative, even though paying it off will be a positive. So you really want credit decisions, and I'm not sure I want Congress making these decisions. The intention is good, but I think they can do more with stimulus than they can do with kind of muddying the waters of what your credit score is. And look, when it comes to credit cards, you should not be buying things with credit cards that you can't pay off at the end of the month unless they're essentials. If your refrigerator breaks and you need a new refrigerator and you don't have the cash to pay for it, you might have to finance one. And in that case, you need to sit down and make a plan for how do I pay this off while paying the least interest possible. That's where you look for 18-month, zero interest financing. We talked about my eyes. It was about $4,000 to get laser eye surgery, an amount I could have paid off. But we have an HSA account. So I didn't want to deplete my HSA account in case we had something where we needed to hit our $3,000 deductible. But by financing over 18 months at 0% interest, I can use the HSA to pay that off monthly without taking a big chunk out of there, sort of staying even with the amount that gets put in by my wife's company each quarter. So we can be in position to deal with the medical emergency. So that's a smart use of credit. It's not costing me any money, and it's leaving that money in my bank account or my stock account or wherever it is, so I can earn. But yeah, you need to understand your credit score. In most cases, your credit card, assuming you have one, will give you a free credit score. That's a pretty broad view of all three of your scores, and you should monitor it for big changes. Now, there'll be changes every month. As you run up a balance, it'll go down. As you pay off that balance, it will go up. If that's the cycle, if you use credit cards to pay for things but pay them off at the end of the month, be aware that that happens. But you might see a shift. Like I saw maybe 8 or 9 months ago, my credit score dropped by 100 points just for no reason out of nowhere. And because I wasn't going to use my credit score for anything, I decided I would wait for a couple of updates. And like 2 updates later, it just fixed itself. So who knows why it was wrong, but I was fully aware of it. And I certainly would have taken steps to find out what had happened if it looked like something had changed, because it could mean a stranger took out a credit card in your name and ran up debt, or who knows what it is. So you really do need to manage these things.
And on Wednesday, I sat down with Kogod Tax Policy Center's Caroline Bruckner to discuss shortfalls in retirement for women. Let's take a look.
In recent years, there's been a tremendous amount of research done on gig economy workers, Uber drivers, Airbnb hosts, Etsy shop owners, folks that were buying and selling services online, coordinated by large platforms that would both connect service providers and sellers with customers and also process payment. And that has really captured a lot of the research space. Is this going to displace traditional employment? What does this mean for our labor economy? And there's been just a tremendous amount of work done on online gig workers. But people have always hired babysitters, caregivers, and workers through their existing neighborhood and offline networks and paid them, cash or under the table, what have you. And so when we started this project, we designed it to consider the retirement implications of gig workers, both those using existing platforms, as well as the larger and actually greater percentage of gig workers that do that work and connect with customers offline. So we are looking at this kind of occasional work that occurs. And this is separate and distinct from people that do independent contract work from as their sole source of income, because the data shows, and what we know is that the majority of folks that do gig work do it as a supplemental source of income, not their main source of income. It is 100% how people work today. And if you just think about it in your own life, I'm a lawyer and I can rattle off, immediately 10 to 12 of my law school classmates and lawyers in my network that not only do law work full time, but also have some other side gig, right? The side gig, that gig work has become more commonplace. And what research has focused on is just the Uber drivers, the Etsy shop owners, the really high profile platforms that have coordinated this kind of work and brought it online without acknowledging that this work has become more commonplace and in fact, even more popular offline. And that happens, and we really saw a massive uptick from about 2000 until the present, because there has been a tremendous growth in the economy and wages have stagnated and people are doing additional jobs to supplement their income. And they're not just doing it using platforms, they're doing it offline. And the tax data bears that out. What we found in the tax data is that women are actually driving the growth of this occasional gig work or using gig work as a supplemental source of income. And women are, the data is very clear, all the BLS labor data, women have always worked part-time and done more part-time work than men. And so it actually makes sense that women doing gig work would be doing it in greater numbers because of needs for flexibility or care in balancing caregiving responsibilities, what have you. But when you consider that in view of retirement financing options available to these kinds of workers, you see that women doing part-time work or women doing gig work aren't going to have the same access to traditional retirement plans from the firms that they work with. And they might not necessarily, particularly in the gig work space, be employees in any event. They're independent contractors. So then you really have to think about, when you're thinking about the mechanism, and that's through the tax code. That's your self-employment tax. And that's where things really get interesting. So this is really the heart of what our research shows and how it disproportionately impacts gig workers. Because the way that these workers are forced to save for retirement is through payment of self-employment tax. Those payroll taxes that employees pay, the percentage that employees and then their employers match and pay into Social Security through payroll taxes. Well, a gig worker or independent contractor, someone who's not subject to employee withholding, is responsible for reporting all of their earnings that are not subject to withholding and paying the total 15.3% self-employment tax. And the reality is that because we have very loose information reporting rules, it actually exacerbates underreporting of these workers in many cases. And the data that we have on these gig workers in terms of how much they earn and how much they work, in many instances, they don't even realize that they're responsible for paying self-employment tax, and then they don't get a 1099, so they don't pay it. This is absolutely critical because this is, in fact, for many of these workers, the only source of retirement income financing that they're eligible for in periods when the only work they do is gig work. I actually did survey data on a population of experienced self-employed workers. I partnered with the National Association of Self-Employed back in 2016, did a survey of their members. And these are experienced small business, independent contractors. These are experienced taxpayers that didn't and weren't aware of what their tax-paying responsibilities were. So certainly there's an education piece. There is an even larger piece, however, which is looking at the information reporting rules and what we task payers to these kinds of workers to report to both the workers and the IRS. And those rules are absolutely out of sync and do not reflect properly income thresholds that trigger appropriate 1099 reporting for both the IRS and these workers. So even if you were to educate these people, the tax data shows that if they don't get a 1099, they don't even realize they have to report this income.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance. You name it, we cover it. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.